Within an ecosystem, there exist different species. And the relation between these species, that how they interact with each other, is what we call as an interaction between those species. So in this lecture, we'll talk about the interactions. We'll make a table here where the A represent a species A and the B represent the species B. Here we will write the name of interaction, and here we will provide an example. Okay, so for example, if it is 0 and 0, it simply means that the presence of species A is not affecting the species B, and neither the presence of species B is affecting A. That's what means 0 and 0. And this relation is what we call as an neutralism. For example, this can be soil bacteria, or the pseudomonas, similarly, if we have plus 0, which means that the one is benefited without the other being harmed, means A is getting benefit from the B, but the B is not getting harmed. That's what the plus 0 means. And such interaction is what we call as a commensalism. And example for such can be clownfish and the sea anemones. If you have seen the Nemo, then you must remember this thing. It's the first scene of the Finding Nemo. Then the pilot fish and the sucker fish. You must have seen on the Discovery Channel that many times when the shark moves, their small fishes also travel with that shark, because they feed on the chunks which were remaining when the whale hunts something, when the shark hunts someone. So they feed on those remaining chunks. So that's a symbiotic relationship between them. So that's a wrong word. We shouldn't say symbiotic, but yes, that's a commensalism in this. The third example can be, you can also mention shark here. It can be the epiphytes. Which basically, epiphytes are basically a long plants, a very tall plants, and on top of those plants, you can see the ferns and orchids over there. So they take space over these long trees. The fourth example can be the hermit crabs. And plus the shell of mollusk. Next example can be the cattle plus egrets. The egrets are the birds which basically sit on the cattle. Example can be the poison dart, frog, and the vermiliat, the small toads. So these can be the example of the commensalism. The next interaction can possibly be the plus and minus. This clearly signifies that the one is getting benefited while the other is harmed. Now this relationship is what we call as predatorism, or simply what we call predator. And the example for such interaction can be uh, um, there are some carnivore plants. uh, it's Nepenthes, I think. Yes, it is. Or it can be Drosera, Altacuria. Other example can be of the parasites. Now these parasites are of two types. The one of them is what we call as ectoparasite. Ectoparasites are those which actually live outside the body of host. So let me write it here: live outside the body of host. Whereas the other type of parasites are what we call as endoparasite. These are those which live inside. Let me write in bracket here, which live inside. And the famous example for this endo parasite can be the malaria. The malaria parasite. Example: malarial parasite. Yes. The next interaction can be, wait a second. Zero minus, which means that the one is getting harmed, right? Means the B is getting harmed, whereas on A there is no effect. Means the presence of one species is harming the other species. Now such relation is what we call as Amensalism. Example for these can be the neem trees. The neem tree, they throw a certain scent through them, because of which it repels different the insects and different things. So because of its smell, many insects don't hang around this tree. So that's one of the example for this one. The other example can be the antibiosis, from which the penicillin is derived. Penicillin. Allelochemical is also the one of them example. Yes. The next interaction, the possibility would be plus plus. Let me. Now this relation is what we call as mutualism, which simply means that each and every one of them, both species, getting benefit from each other. They're not harming each other. And the example for such can be the rhizobium, which lives in legumes, which basically responsible for the nitrogen fixation. Yes. And the other example can be the coral reefs, I think. Yes, the coral reefs plus coral polyps. Other example can be uh, the African acacia tree, that is a very giant tree in Africa, plus the African acacia ants. It's It's a very amazing relation between these African acacia trees. Is that it's a tree full of insects, full of ants. That's called the African acacia ants. So whenever any animal come closer to this tree, little bit of shake itself, and these ants drop over that animal, and because of that, that animal don't come closer to them. So that's a symbiotic relationship we can see between the tree and the ants, and I think that's amazing. The other example can be pollination. Yes, I think we are pretty much done here. Now, the other thing that I want to share is that there are few terms that I think you should always remember. For example, like Uri and Steno. The Uri signifies that which can thrive in long temperature, means which can live in the long temperature. So let me write it here. Live in long temperature. Similarly, the steno is something what we call as which can live in particular temperature. So let me write it here. Particular temperature. Yes. Now, because of these two words, there can be a multiple things they can ask you over that. For example, like Euryhaline. Now you can easily guess that Uri means living in long range, right? Haline means salt, right? Means salt water. So means those organisms, those species which lives in a the long range of salinity. So right, a long range of salinity. Similarly, if it is Stenohaline, it means that which can strive in particular range. Similarly, if it is like a Euryhygric, now the Uri means the long range and the hygric means humidity. So which can strive in long range of humidity. Similarly, if it is Stenohygric, then you can easily know that which can strive in the particular range. So I think that's pretty much done here. Now we'll discuss more about these things in the upcoming lectures. Thank you.